You can roughly group all genealogical sources into 3 types: primary, secondary, and tertiary. In this video, I'm going to give a quick 5-minute overview of tertiary source documents, which are summaries of family research without supporting citations. Quick version: assume good intent, but know the author made mistakes. You should use their research as a roadmap to find their sources and double check every part of their work. Just in case the terminology is new to you, primary source documents are documents that are created contemporaneously with a given event. Secondary source documents are detailed analyses written after the event, but they are based on explicitly cited primary source documents. When I review tertiary sources, I follow my principles for genealogy research. First, the person who created the source had good intentions. They're not lying, they're not fabricating facts out of thin air. Second, despite their best efforts, they're human. They make honest mistakes. They might have misunderstood the record or confused it with another person, or even presented a guess from another researcher as fact. To put it another way, you shouldn't trust tertiary sources to have the facts correct, but you can use them to retrace someone else's steps to help you speed up your search. Let's look at 2 examples of tertiary sources. First, the genealogy of Jacob Asher Heil, contained in Colonial and Revolutionary Families of Pennsylvania. It was published by the Historical Society of Pennsylvania in 1911. I was specifically interested in Philip Heil, an ancestor of my wife and a Philadelphia baker who fought at the Battle of Princeton in January of 1777. Now, I grew up in Princeton. I just wanted a connection between my Oregonian wife and my hometown. So I create a record for Philip using the information I got from the tertiary source, and I get a bunch of hints. I find one record, a record of his death, that mostly matches the information in the tertiary source, though the date is slightly different. The key thing is that I want to get a connection between my wife's family, the Racers, and Philip Heil. And look at that, I found a will that mentions Mary Racer. Pretty good, right? Now, I can't find source documents to prove all the facts, but I've got enough evidence to prove out Philip Heil's connection to my wife's family. Let's take an example where assuming good intent will lead you astray. Eugene Singer's A Singer Family of Colonial Vermont in Canada. First self-published in 1996, Singer's work was the only published genealogy of the George Slough who married and had a family in Pennsylvania in the late 1700s and then died in Ontario, Canada around 1811 or 1812. Singer asserted that his George Slough was the eldest son of Philip Slough and Margaretha Herzl of Northampton County, Pennsylvania. They did have a son named George, and he was about the right age and came from Pennsylvania. He looked a lot like Singer's George. Philip Slough died intestate in the 1750s, and the Orphans Court record notes that their eldest son, George, made claim to the estate in 1759. Singer wrote that in 1769, George's youngest brother, and I quote, Jacob Slough, petitioned the court for division of their father's estate. It is a matter of record that George did not participate in this event, end quote. Singer then writes that the genealogy upon which he relied states that George had probably died, since there was no further record. This is where Singer's genealogy really turns pear-shaped. He misunderstood the probate proceeding, thinking that the stepfather took control of the farm and banished the children to custodians on other farms. None of this was the case. Singer then alleges that George was only presumed dead, writing, and I quote, "One may speculate that George's way of handling the family problem was simply to move out, and that by 1769, George was actually living 70 miles away." Singer's work gives you a roadmap to retrace his steps, and the directions point to Hana Benner Roach's 1966 genealogy of the Herzl family, which was published in the Pennsylvania Genealogical Magazine. I found Roach's article on Ancestry.com, and it gave lots of fantastic details. The thing is, Roach's article states that Philip Slough and Margaret Herzl's son George, and I quote, died unmarried and without issue. With a conflicting secondary and tertiary source, I had to take it a step further. I searched for Philip Schlauch's probate record on FamilySearch.org. That contemporary primary source record stated, and I quote, "George, the eldest son, who died since without issue." Let's assume good intentions. Singer found Roach's article in the 1980s or early 1990s, miswrote his notes, and came to the wrong conclusion. But he provided enough information in his work to retrace his steps. And with that, I could conclude that he made a mistake. There were two men named George Slow of about the same age, one living in Northampton County, Pennsylvania, the other in Berks County, Pennsylvania. The Northampton George died around 1760. The other moved to Canada and died around 1811. I hope you enjoyed this 5-minute genealogy video. Please subscribe to my channel and give a thumbs up. If you've got any questions or suggestions, please leave them in the comments.